UFC 294 has come to an end. What a card. It was okay at best. Maybe it wasn't quite what all of us were expecting it to be, but then again, expectations were so high. It's sometimes just hard to keep at it, you know? The prelims were a bit of a disappointment, but the main card was really interesting, everything that went on. Overall, I'd give the card a 5 out of 10 total, maybe a 4 out of 10 in enjoyment. But either way, tonight I'm just here to talk about what happened on the main card specifically with the one prelim fight that you're going to see, just break down my thoughts on it, what happened, the results, and all of that, what I think should happen next. So let's get started right away. I'm also holding my microphone today, so hopefully it's a bit maybe easier to hear my audio this time around. But either way, we start off with Shara Bullet versus Bruno Silva. So this went about as expected. I had Shara Bullet winning by either decision or by a second or third round TKO KO. I watched a lot of Shara Bullet's highlights and his previous fights, and my conclusion was kind of that I think he's a bit overrated when it comes to the power. I think he's a good striker, but I don't think he has this Alex Pereira touch of death like people were hyping him up to have. He looked impressive on the feet with his kicks, and he hurt Silva a couple of times as well. I believe it was a head kick that had Silva wobbled quite a bit. And he was landing these beautiful body kicks, these beautiful leg kicks specifically that really impressed me. I'd mentioned, or I hadn't uploaded my full breakdown, but when I had recorded it, my thought process was that he has to get those leg kicks going because Bruno does not deal with those very well, and he did. He has good takedown defense. Now, when I wrote that was right after the fight had happened. Looking back, he did get taken down quite a few times. Now, he defended several of them, so I thought, okay, he has good takedown defense. But in hindsight, Bruno Silva taking you down and holding you down the entire time, not really what I would call good takedown defense. And he was just okay with staying down. With that being said, he was landing really good elbows and really good shots even while he was on his back. Even though he was taken down, he was the one doing the damage despite being on his back. So that was really impressive. But he kind of was taken down and he was okay with being down. And I know in the post-fight press conference, Dana was talking about how Shara is like the first Dagestani he's seen who doesn't know how to grapple, which is kind of true, right? Because you would expect for a guy like, for a Dagestani guy, first to be really difficult to take down, and two, even if you get him down, they just get right back up, right? Whereas Shara Bullet was just staying down, but again, he was landing good shots. He did slow down considerably as the fight went on. This is something I saw in Shara Bullet's other fights. He does fatigue as the fight goes on. But overall, it was an impressive win. I think Bruno Silva, he hasn't been the same since Alex Pereira. But either way, this was a good win for Shara Bullet. This was his first real big test in his career. He's still early in his career, and what comes next for him, there's a lot they can do. They could always go the Bo Nickel, Joe Pyfer grappling route, see how he deals with grappling heavy guys like him, see if he can improve his grappling a bit before throwing him in with the big dogs like DDP or Hamzat Chimaev, or if Kamaru Usman stays around, that's also a potential fight as well. And again, he's going to have to work on his takedown defense, but the striking looked good. We then move on to the main card, Said Nurmagomedov versus Muin Gafurov. Very quick, very impressive first round choke. Basically how I called it. One thing I recognized while watching Gafurov, his previous fights, was that he has a habit of bum rushing his opponents. His head will be kind of down, and he'll just throw overhands or looping shots. And watching Said's tapes, one thing I recognized was that Said is very good on the back foot. When he's on the back foot, he'll usually go for like a spinning kick. And my original prediction was that he was going to land a spinning kick while on the back foot. It was going to knock Gafurov down, maybe not even hurt him, but just land one with the momentum of it, knocking Gafurov down, get in a choke, get in a guillotine, and win. Kind of what happened, but without the spinning kick. He did go for something, but it didn't land, and he just got him down, and he didn't even get him down. He just latched in the choke, and that was it, as Gafurov was bum rushing him. So the guillotine was there, and I'm just not impressed by Gafurov. I really do think he's kind of amateurish. I was watching his previous fights, and he just has a habit of bum rushing guys and getting caught. So basically went how I expected it to. Said looked great as always. A really, really fun stand-up type of guy to watch, and he's a problem at this division. I'd really like to see somebody higher in the rankings for him next, for sure. We then move on to another first round finish. This time it was Ikram Aliskerov versus Warley Alves. Again, Ikram dropped Alves with a jab and then went for the finish later. So he threw a jab originally that dropped him. That was kind of the beginning of the end. He threw a jumping knee and that put him out, right? He looked really impressive. My thought process going into this was I was watching some tape. Alves isn't impressive to me. He has one impressive win, which is like Colby Covington and at welterweight. Aside from, and that was years ago. And Ikram was one of those guys. It's like all I really could say about him was that he had a really good takedown defense. I watched this fight with Phil Hawes. Phil Hawes had been knocked out 4 times before. Wasn't particularly impressive in any way. But Phil Hawes had come back. He had, I think, trained in Thailand. Had a new style of, when it came to fighting, more of a Muay Thai style. And Ikram got the knockout. So I wasn't particularly convinced, and I still think this was a great performance against a not so impressive fighter. So I don't think Alves was a real challenge. I would have loved to see that fight with I'm forgetting his name, but the original fight that he had booked, I would have loved to see how that would have gone. 2 Dagestani guys, 2 stand-up Dagestani guys as well. But overall, fantastic performance. I'd say just rebook that fight, honestly, because I don't think either of these guys are ranked, so just go for that one. Overall, a really impressive win. The second first-round knockout, or first-round finish of the night on the main card. We then go on to the most disappointing result of the card. Honestly, this was the fight I was probably most not interested, but the fight I thought had the most potential to be fight of the night. Saeed was my lock of the card, but this is going to be the best fight of the night, and that's kind of strange. You're going to be like, well, Magomed Ankalaev, his fight with Jan. If you watch Magomed Ankalaev and he keeps the fight standing up, he is really, really fun to watch. Even in that Jan fight, the fight was fun until really the 4th and 5th round where he just kind of laid on top of Jan. He's a really fun fighter, and let's not forget Johnny Walker is Johnny Walker. So everybody's talking about the controversy with the doctor. What basically happened, from what I can tell, is that after he got knee to the head, it wasn't like even a really bad knee. Johnny Walker knew where he was. He was probably just taking some time to rest, to heal up. And when the doctor came in and the doctor asked him, like, do you know where you are? Where are we? And I guess Johnny Walker was like, we're in the desert, which technically speaking is true. And the doctor probably thought he was like badly concussed, didn't know where he was, and ended the fight. Johnny was obviously, I don't think he saw the referee wave the fight off, so he kind of went, when he saw the referee move back, he just kind of went to the center of the octagon, and when he found out that the fight was called off, he was fuming. Magomed, I feel bad for him. He obviously didn't mean to like, he probably just wasn't thinking at that moment, didn't think it was illegal, didn't see the hand on the floor. And that's the second fight for him where it's like, you could have argued if you watched the Jan fight and you thought that he won the first round, then Ankalaev should be champion, right? Like, that previous fight I've rewatched, if it really comes down to the first round, and if Ankalaev won that first round, he would be champion. If the judges thought he had won, at least. So now his last 2 fights are a draw and a no contest, by the way. Strange decision to have a no contest. Should have been a DQ technically if Johnny Walker couldn't continue. But that doctor, and I know Dano in the post-fight press conference was like, oh, the doctor's kind of new. First, the doctor didn't look particularly new to the act of being a doctor. But if this was his first time at a UFC show, I just don't think it's acceptable. You can't play around with these guys' lives, their livelihood. Careers are short, careers are fast. You can't be wasting time like this. So unacceptable by the doctor. Get rid of him. Should never be at another UFC event. This was a second big flop, if you know what I'm talking about. Earlier in the night, he had a really strange moment as well. But when the fight was happening, my original, what I had thought the fight would go, I had Magomed Ankalaev winning by a head kick, either knocking out Johnny Walker or getting him into the ground where Ankalaev would then land some TKO shots, or a decision. And I remember telling Guru about this on one of his chats, and he was like, you're looking at Ankalaev, who's shorter than Johnny Walker, how's he going to land the head kick? And I was just saying that, look, this guy has a really good head kick, and we saw him almost land it right in the fight. He almost landed the head kick on Johnny Walker. It's open, and I really do think that's how it would have gone. But then again, Ankalaev did get him to the ground. He was landing some really good shots. Like, Ankalaev was looking really good, and it was supposed to be a really fun fight. Unfortunately, it went that way. I think this was kind of when my opinion on the card was like, we've had 2 first fight finishes on the main card, but the prelim was kind of boring, and now the fight I was really looking forward to gets called off due to a completely dumb reason. Really disappointing. But I would say just rebook the fight, honestly. Just book it again and do it somewhere where that doctor isn't around. Move on to the co-main event, Khamzat Chimaev versus Kamaru Usman. Chimaev won by majority decision. The real, I'd say, question to come out of this is, was this a hype-killing performance, or did his hype increase? He beats a former welterweight champion, one of the most dominant fighters in the UFC, on short notice. But that's the thing. It was on short notice. Chimaev had been off for a year, had so much time to improve. Usman has terrible knees, showed up on short notice for a division he hasn't fought in, and he lost. And he made it competitive. Dominant first round. So that's one thing where I have to say that if there's anything that keeps the hype of Chimaev going, it's the fact that nobody's been able to do this to Kamaru Usman. I don't think there's anybody in the UFC in either the middleweight, welterweight division that could do to Usman what Chimaev did. I don't think there's anybody. There are a lot of good grapplers in those 2 divisions. Nobody could do that to Usman. Chimaev looked fantastic in the first round, but he's one of those guys, man, he's a 1-round intense machine, but if he can survive that first round, we saw what happened in the second round. He didn't do a single thing. The second round in general was kind of boring. Nobody was really throwing anything, but Usman, I think you have to give him that round. And my honest opinion is I don't think Chimaev should get a title shot based off that performance. Again, people are going to be like, you're too harsh. It was a really good he beat a former champion. While I understand that, again, when you're fighting a guy on short notice, you see what we're going to see in the main event, what happens when you fight a guy on short notice. But to fight a guy like Usman on short notice and to basically make it so close that a lot of people thought it was a draw, not even a Chimaev win, I just don't think you can, when you have DDP who just KO'd Robert Whittaker, or TKO'd Robert Whittaker, one of the best fighters in the middleweight division, it's really hard to look at Chimaev and justify him getting a fight for the championship. They're probably going to go that route. It seemed that they were going to go that route from the post-fight interview. It's an unfortunate, but he's just a one-round machine, and if the fight goes past that, his opponents have a better chance. And I am curious how he's going to do against Strickland and DDP and all these other guys, right? Because Strickland is very hard to take down. DDP is, and I think he still takes him down. But if they survive the first round, they're probably going to win. That's my honest opinion. He gasses himself out way too much in the first round with that intensity. A very fun style to watch. But once that first round is over, it's kind of disappointing. But either way, Chimaev wins against Usman. I think maybe you should either rebook the fight with Costa or do a fight with Whittaker. I think... and meanwhile, you have Strickland fight DDP. Or you can also do Chimaev versus Adesanya, which is like a super fight. I know Adesanya is taking some time off, but Chimaev, if he was saying he broke his hand, so if that's the case, give him some time off. By the time he comes back, hopefully Adesanya will be looking to come back as well. You can literally make Chimaev versus Adesanya a pay-per-view main event. And now we move on to the main event. Makhachev wins by a head kick. Did anybody see this going the way it went? I know some people did have Makhachev winning by first round knockout. I had Makhachev winning either by decision or by a third, fourth round TKO KO. Head kick, man. Insanity. Early on in the fight, though, Volkanovski did show some really super strength again. Stuffed the Makhachev takedown, and he was looking good. He was looking really good. Makhachev was setting up all of those head kicks, right? He was going to the legs, he was going to the body, he was kind of giving Volkanovski stuff to think about. And Makhachev really proved that he's a great striker. He's not just a wrestler anymore. And he did this on the front foot, right? He wasn't backing up when he did this. Makhachev's known for his great boxing defense. But now we have to talk about his offense as well. He's looking real good. proved he's not just a wrestler, lands the head kick, proceeds to smash. There was some controversy I see online that he landed some back of the head shots. I think he landed one or two, of course, not ideal, but they weren't intentional, and the rest were kind of on the top of the head. And again, Makhachev looked fantastic. And going back to Chimaev and Usman, like, this is what you do to a guy on short notice, even though Volkanovski is the best in the world. Um, and you can't really blame the short notice too much, actually, because if this had been like a 5-round war where Volkanovski kind of tired out as third, fourth, fifth round went, you could argue that if he had more of a gas tank, he could have outlasted him and won. But this was just a first round KO, right? Like, even if Volkanovski had a full fight camp, would he be training for a head kick, right? Like, I mean, obviously a full fight camp would be ideal, but this was a clean win. You can't take anything away from Makhachev. Definite pound for pound number one. Volkanovski is going to need to take some time off. I know he wants to fight again in January. He understands that his peak is here. He feels it, and he wants it to last as long as it possibly can. But when you get knocked out bad like that, and he got cut up pretty bad, I'd say stay off until March, right? Just take some time off, heal up a bit. And as far as Makhachev goes, he took no damage, essentially. Aside from the fact that his body probably needs to heal up from the weight cut, he can probably make a quick turnaround even before Volkanovski, like January, February maybe. But the question comes down to the problem is who fights him, Oliveira or Gaethje, right? I know Gamrot was the backup originally for Makhachev Oliveira, but they gave it to Volkanovski, and then Gamrot was the backup in case anything happened for this fight. And the question becomes: is the UFC going to reward him? What do you do with Oliveira, right? He just got a cut. He doesn't need to take a bunch of time off. Gaethje's waiting as well. He's probably next as well. They mentioned Gaethje and Oliveira. They didn't mention Gamrot in the post-fight interview, so I'm thinking they're going to kind of ignore Gamrot, which I prefer. I don't really want to see him fight for the title, honestly. I'd much rather see Oliveira or Gaethje. So that's probably going to be what's next. They might do Oliveira versus Gamrot and do Makhachev versus Gaethje in the meantime, and the winner, or they might do Oliveira versus Gaethje, the rematch. There's a lot you can do. Either way, end of the night, the third first round finish of the pay-per-view. Overall, I think it was just an okay event, right? If you include the prelim, it wasn't that fun like as we were kind of expecting it to be, but it ended on a insane note. And with that, that's my opinion on the show. That's my opinion on the card. What'd you guys think? Were you impressed? Were you surprised? Were you bored? How do you feel about it? What do you think happens next? And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.